Captain Midnight.
At some point, we went from this
Good night, Lisa.
to this.
It's still epic.
I've noted this before, but it's gotten so noticeable with recent Simpsons, it just feels like I had to address the elephant in the room. The serious decline of Julie Kavner's voice as Marge. Here's the thing, this is a tricky one to address, because the last thing I'd want to do here is insult Kavner, call for her recasting, or anything like that. She's a legend in my book, a key part of one of the best comedies of all time. This is not about why she needs to go, but why this is a key sign that the show itself needs to wrap things up with some sense of closure before members of the cast can no longer play their characters. And I know I'm not coming to a profound revelation here, plenty of people have commented about this through the years, but that's exactly what I want to focus on this week. The evolution of Marge Simpson's voice, what fans have said about it, and how it's become too much to ignore. It's a tough topic, but I think it's one worth talking about. Before that, I'd really like to thank everyone who subscribed last week. We're getting closer and closer to that 750k mark. I know about 65% of my viewers aren't subscribed yet, so if you find yourself watching and haven't yet, now could be the time.
C-U-P. I want to see you. Oh my god.
Let's get into how we got here. Like most of the Simpsons cast, Julie Kavner has been there since the very beginning, predating the show itself, thanks to being a series regular on the Tracey Ullman Show, where the characters got their start. It's fascinating to go back to these sketches now, and I don't just mean the original Simpsons shorts. It's really cool to see how Kavner was used here, and how they'd eventually translate those strengths into Marge. She's often playing the straight woman in sketches, but I'd say she also excelled at the odd and off-putting roles. Like her memorable turn as Phyllis, a woman absolutely afraid of everything in one of the show's stronger sketches.
Keep worrying that the cook has spit on my food.
She has a unique voice, but it's hard to hear notes of Marge at this point. What's much easier to make out is the blend of neuroticism and a grounded straight woman persona that would go on to be crucial to the show's success. I often look at early Marge kind of like early Dee in Always Sunny. Early on, especially in those shorts, she feels like the counterweight to the more outrageous personalities of Bart and Homer, anchoring the show in some semblance of emotional reality. But as The Simpsons went on, Marge grew into something more unique, with her own strange foibles and quiet tragedies. Sorry, it's really hard to not just make this a video about scenes from the class struggle in Springfield. Anyway, the rougher look of season 1 has often been noted, but in a way, we're extremely lucky that both Tracey Ullman and The Simpsons started as low budget as they did. Ullman show producer James L. Brooks hired Matt Groening to craft and animate these segments for the show, but didn't exactly have a deep budget to bring in specific voice talent, utilizing a lot of the established cast to play the family members. And they kept that cast going into the show proper. Kavner naturally fits in as Marge for the very same reason she was brought over to the Ullman show to begin with. Brooks had previously worked with Kavner on the 70s show Rhoda, and specifically wanted her steady, grounded style to counterbalance Tracey Ullman and Dan Castellaneta's broader performances. As The Simpsons started to blow up, Hilary DeVries of the New York Times famously described her as having a honeyed gravel voice, which Kavner says was thanks to a bump on her vocal cords. It gave Marge a voice that made her stand out immediately, and it worked really well for the shorts. But looking back with the benefit of hindsight, I do really wonder if Kavner regrets committing to that voice for so long. Because going on the surprisingly limited evidence we have, I feel pretty confident in saying that playing Marge has altered her voice permanently, or at least played a large part in it changing. Now, Julie Kavner is known to be a pretty private person, and she rarely makes public appearances ever since the show took off, with most of her credits since the 90s being Marge. But looking at her earlier performances in things like Rhoda and the Ullman Show sketches, along with certain earlier interviews, only little glimpses of Marge's voice are present. She doesn't like doing the voice in public, which became clear when you watch her begrudgingly turn away from the camera to do the voice on Letterman in '94, and the contrast between it and her speaking voice are still very clear. But little by little, you can see it creeping up a bit. And you can compare that to a non-Simpsons role now. Surprisingly, Kavner actually has a movie coming out this year, Ella McCoy, where she plays the narrator. I don't want to play a ton of that trailer, but here's a little bit of it.
So I'm not exactly neutral. I'm nuts about her.
Now, obviously she's playing a character here, but I think it's clear how much more gravelly her voice has become, even when not playing Marge. And that makes sense when you spend so much time in character and exaggerating your voice to hit that very specific level. It only follows that your natural vocals would skew a little, but maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here. Kavner's voice of the 80s and early 90s was naturally maybe a little bit gravelly and weary, yet still pretty warm, and she clearly had to turn that up to 11, exaggerating her gravelly timbre for Marge. During the early and golden eras of the show, this performance was still capable of a lot of range. Brilliantly versatile at scolding Homer, Lisa, and Bart, but also capable of being delicate and really bringing some heart to the show.
Rise and shine, little guy. Time to wake up.
So, when did this start to change? A lot of people would pin it to the mid-2000s. On the 1st of May, 2005, the season 16 episode Don't Fear the Roofer aired. You might remember it as the episode where Homer befriends Ray Romano, playing a roofer who nobody else believes exists. This is the earliest point I could find in which fans of the show commented on the decline of Marge's voice, specifically claiming that it's a lot more raspy than it used to be. There was also a discussion on the now defunct TV blog TV Tome, which claimed inaccurately, I think, that she had throat cancer in an article, which I think has since been wiped from the internet, all because fans kept commenting on her sounding like she did, showing that even early on, at least by Simpsons standards, people were having some reactions to the direction that her performance was taking. I can kind of see where they're coming from, like it does feel like there's a slight deviation from the Marge we know, but now, it hardly feels like anything. Later that year, as season 17 began to air, more and more comments on Simpsons-based threads, or even the Simpsons fan forum, nohomers.net, started appearing, with some even stating that despite the transition over the past season or two, Marge's voice was especially off during the season 17 opener, Bonfire of the Manatees.
'Cause you're the real endangered species. A devoted husband.
But the floodgates for conversations around this began to truly open when the movie released in July of 2007. The Simpsons movie is a really important point in the show's history, because not only did it bring back a lot of the Golden Age writers, but, and I think this is crucial, it was the first time a lot of fans had checked in with the characters since the Golden Age. And for a lot of them, the difference seemed very stark. Still, I want to stand up for Kavner's performance here. I made a video on how much I love this movie, and I think Kavner's more strained vocals work so well in this context. The family has been on the run, they're tired, they're struggling, and the scene where Marge leaves Homer, taking the kids with her, and explains it all on a message to Homer that she left half recorded on a VHS tape over their wedding video, just works so well. Kavner is great here. Her voice doesn't sound like season 5, but it fits perfectly in the context of the scene. She's been dealing with Homer's general Homerness for so long, and she just can't overlook it anymore. She can't rationalize it away. What's worth noting though is that the exhaustion in her voice here was still very purposeful, with producer Mike Scully going on record saying, "We were really trying to get to a woman who is completely broken and her spirit is defeated. I got there, I guess, by breaking the actress's spirit." Later stating it was a grueling 100 to 150 takes for the scene, and I think you could tell.
And to prove to myself that this is the end, I taped this over our wedding video.
These days though, I don't think that sounds nearly as rough as her average line reading on the show. I mean, maybe those grueling takes really did have a downside. While it would be way too simplistic to attribute her voice going downhill to those tough movie recording sessions, I don't think Marge would ever really spring back to where she was in the early days. It's not like it was a night and day difference after the movie, but the signs of decline were definitely there. Now, I do think the movie would have been a great place to end things, but of course, Fox was having none of that. And by season 26, it was just very common to see fans complain and joke about Marge's voice.
Might as well clean this while I'm killing myself.
The once controlled rasp had grown even coarser, losing much of her range and occasionally collapsing into a monotonous growl, sounding much more like her chain-smoking sisters, Patty and Selma, both of whom Kavner also voiced for decades, which probably didn't help. Eventually, we got to the season 33 premiere, The Star of the Backstage, which I made a video on a few years ago. And that features what to my mind is the worst Marge voice I've ever heard. And the producers seem to know this too, with Kavner being the only main cast member not asked to sing her own songs, having to build that into the concept of the episode.
Of course, it's all Sasha's fault.
So where do we go from here? Well, you'll see a lot of talk of recasting or AI online, and I'll say right now, no thank you. Julie Kavner is Marge in my mind, and the show should not replace her just to squeeze out some more late-era episodes. And it's worth acknowledging, this is not an issue confined to Marge. Although it's probably most noticeable with Kavner, she's definitely not alone, which is only natural when the show has gone on as long as it has. Hank Azaria's Moe and Harry Shearer's Otto have changed. Even Homer is a little squeakier and older sounding now. Voices change, people age, and playing exaggerated characters for so long just bears a toll. This isn't unique to The Simpsons, it's part of any long-term voice acting. Even Mel Blanc, the original voice of Bugs Bunny, famously lost some of his vocal range as he aged. So this was not meant as a video to shame Julie Kavner and how her vocals are holding up. She's a talented pro who gave us an iconic character. And yes, I do think the solution here is just to wrap things up, and I know that's easy enough to say, but it probably isn't happening anytime soon. And if that's the case, I really think they should find a way for the Marge character to fit where her voice is now. Which, yes, would probably take us to my other favorite talking point, just let the characters age. Marge's current voice is to me emblematic of the fact that even in the realm of animation, you can't deny the passage of time forever. It will always creep in. I talk about movies and TV a lot on this channel, but I rarely cover video games, so I was kind of surprised when Shell Games reached out to me and asked if I wanted to try their VR game, something I don't really have much experience with. I said I'd give it a look, and I'm glad I did, because I Expect You to Die, the Phoenix Rising trilogy is not what I expected. After a decade of development, this was straight up a really fun, fleshed out, impressive game, with mechanics that are constantly building on each other in the best way. As Agent Phoenix, an agent with telekinetic powers, I had a lot of fun with the inventive puzzles, the over-the-top and bizarre villains, and the locations that felt straight out of 60s 007. It all added up to a game with a surprisingly dry sense of humor. I screwed up and died in so many weird ways here, and it always felt earned because you have so much freedom to just experiment. I also looked into the speedrunning scene, and what people are pulling off is insane. I have a long way to go, but every reason to keep trying. If you're fairly new to VR, this is a great place to start with a massive community. They lent me a headset for this, and I don't know, man, I don't want to give it back. So check out I Expect You to Die and get 45% off on the 3 games using my promo code and the link which you'll find down in the description below.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once, because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started, because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes, too.